That's Jefferson. Climbs the ladder. Oh, my goodness. Come
Up, Drew Brody, JJ back here from Rumpier Sports, talking a little MLB on this fine Saturday, June 24th. Tell you what, it's not necessarily a fine Saturday. It's fucking raining all morning. I know, right? Cue the tiny violin. I don't think, though, despite the rain here, I don't think that has any impact on any of these games today. Overall, I'm no weatherman. But I don't believe we are dealing with any weather concerns, rain-wise. But I will make sure we check through that game by game. But yeah, what's up, Bill? Yes, hit the like button. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Let's not go crazy or go overboard. I don't need you guys creating fake accounts. Grabbing the trap phones to like the video, but just like the video yourselves, right? We don't ask a lot of you. Just kind of that. What's up, Rick? Thank you. What's up, Kim? Hope all is well. I haven't spoken to you in a while, so hope everything's well with you and the missus. Yes, so looking forward to this slate today. Early in the week, late last week, early in the week, good stuff on my end, bad stuff on my end. 3 straight days afterwards, kind of tilting on that regard. The lack of ability to find consistency. And I'll tell you this, even games getting handed off to the pens, obviously you don't handicap games just based on bullpens, but it almost feels like games that have been handicapped where you kind of forget bullpens, you still get bailed out and win. Games where you go out of your way to make sure you have ready arms from the pen, you still lose. I think I remember it's 3 games ago, the Padres had used their pen arms back-to-back games. The next day they win anyway, or they lost late in an extra inning game. And then I played them the day after where I know I got a starting pitching edge, bullpen edge, still doesn't matter. It's been frustrating in that regard. It's almost felt like the KBO in that regard. But no, ultimately, overall for baseball, I really can't complain. Again, numbers are skewed on my end just based on, the clay swing in tennis. But, overall is what it is. All you can do is just try to move forward as best you possibly can. I know that we have a potential, looks like, a delay maybe in Philly. But I'll be honest, once you get past the delay, it should be fine to go if there is a delay. But I'll talk more on that as we go through. Obviously, Cubs cards are already playing. DFS slate, and this has kind of been my issue with how they've been doing things on the MLB side of the house on Saturdays, especially. They just load up on these 4:00 games. Maybe people like them. I don't know, 4:00 on a Saturday. If you have kids and whatnot, you're usually busy. Granted, I don't have kids yet, LOL, but 4 p.m. slate where you have 10 games just seems a bit much. I'd much prefer these be spread out more. Load up 3 or 4 1:00 games. Add in a 2 or 3. At that point, you can have a 6-game early slate. Then throw another 4 or 5 games at 4:00. You have another slate. And then you wrap it up with whatever it is, 4 or 5 games at night. People that want to play in the night slate, great. Just feels like these slates are so top heavy at 4:00. I just don't understand it. What's up, Don? What's up, Matty Ice? But yeah, we'll talk some DFS. Obviously, I'll go game by game. I'll give you my thoughts pitching wise. I do have 2 bets that I made, so I'll talk through them as well. Talk through some ownership of pitching. Talk where we can maybe make some leverage pivots. Obviously, game stacks, the whole bit. So I'll go through it as I go game by game. But without further ado, let's just dive right in. So first game up, Giants D-backs. Merrill Kelly has been phenomenal this year, especially phenomenal on the road, which above all else is impressive for his standards because coming into this year, he was always one of those pitchers that had terrible home road splits, good at home, bad on the road. A lot of pitchers are like this. But he's been phenomenal. So kudos to him in terms of improving himself. I do think he's still hittable, if you will. I don't think he's as good as his ERA states at 2.9. But on the other end of things, the young little guy, Ryan Walker from San Francisco, this dude was an absolute monster in the farm system this year and comes up and he's been no different thus far. As far as how I look at this game, you got a decently cold weather game in New York. I say cold. When I say cold, it's relative to the time of year, right? So We're in June. It's going to be 55 degrees in San Francisco. I look at that as cold for June. With that said, I would lean this game under at the number of 8. Again, Walker's been phenomenal, and Kelly's proven he has no issues pitching on the road. I guess you could call this a bit of an early start for a West Coast side of things, but overall, and then I look at these lineups, like the Giants lineup with Sable, Bailey, Crawford, who can't hit anything right now, and Matos at the bottom, just like black holes everywhere. And JD Davis hitting fourth for a guy that mashes lefties, not seeing one today. It just feels like the Giants end's watered down. On the D-backs end, they've been hitting all year long. The fact that Carson Kelly hits eighth is, this lineup's kind of really revamped itself, and it's part of the reason why the record is what it is. Now, granted, they've had elevation from pitching on the D-back side of things, but as far as betting wise, again, slightly under. Don't love that though. Eight's the issue with 8 is like you get 3 runs from both teams and you're sweating regardless. So yeah, I don't love the spot there. As far as how these two match up pitching wise in relation to DFS, Walker is just going to start the game more or less. Obviously, he's an opener, so call it max you're going to get at him is 2 innings, and then behind him is going to come Keaton Wynn, who you could argue has been even better. Early though, right? It was recently called up. So just again, a lot of arrows going different directions for me here. Would lean under with the back-to-back good arms coming in from San Fran. I don't think either of them are playable at all on the DFS side. Not that that's crazy news. And I think it's absolutely asinine to pay 10-1K for Merrill Kelly today. So if Merrill Kelly's in your pool, look, God bless you. I know I prefer the under, but you are paying top dollar season price for Merrill Kelly on the road against a Giants team that can hit. Granted, I do think the lineup's a little watered down, but that still does not make his 10K price point make any type of sense. Looking like about 15 to 16% ownership for Merrill Kelly becomes an easy push out of lineup builds. He gets there. Look, if he was 5% today, I'd make the argument for him at 15% at 10-1, knowing for him to really reach optimal, you'd need a bunch of pitchers to bust or him to, drop like a 23, 24 burger at least. Look, he's capable of doing it. I mean, granted, he's gone over he's gone over 30 or 25 in, 4 or 5 starts this year, but do realize when he went over that number, he was certainly not 10-1 in terms of price. So yeah, Merrill Kelly, easy fade for me. Want no part of that. God bless folks that pay that tag for him. But we'll just move on to the next game, Phillies Mets. So I did bet this game. I did bet the Mets here. I know the Mets are losers of 3 straight. And I believe maybe 4 of 5 or 5 of 6. I do think price-wise, this is a good time to get on them. Scherzer coming off a good start. Not that I like to target pitchers like him off good starts, but from a confidence standpoint, that had to help, right? Scherzer's really been trying to find himself, especially on the road, to go into Houston last week and throw 8 innings of 1-run ball. Really phenomenal. And I think, it gives the opportunity for him to build on it. And to me, this looks like a really cheap price. Like I know that Scherzer was getting some market respect for a bit this year. To me, this line isn't a crazy amount of market respect. And the main reason why I don't look at it as a crazy respect is because Christopher Sanchez was absolutely mauled in a double-A or triple-A. We'll call it the farm system. Absolutely mauled. He gets called up. He's had a few good starts. At what point do you just trust the bigger sample size? There's another pitcher in a few games that we'll talk more on as well, but in a similar type of fashion. But yeah, I don't trust him at all. I think this is a good opportunity to liven the Mets bats. Philly went through their best 3 rotation arms yesterday as well. They didn't even have to. Wasn't even a save situation. But they did anyway. So even if this game goes to the Pens, Philly's top 3 arms are going to be used back-to-back days. The Mets have their full suite of arms in that event. So yeah, look, I get it. Philly's been better this year. They've been hitting better this year. They've pitched better this year. But in relation to this price in this match, I really like the Mets here behind Scherzer. It just feels like Scherzer's become untrendy. And that's usually when you want to jump on pitchers like him, right? You get a softer price in this matchup, all things considered. So, yeah, I know I have the better starting arm. I'm not convinced I have the worst lineup because, as we looked up and down this lineup, yeah, the Mets have looks like a bit watered down at the bottom. But there's still some big names in here who can absolutely mash left-handed pitching. So they platooned a few guys, that will leave some room to pinch hit later on in the game for some lefties. But needless to say, like the spot for Scherzer, build on his confidence. I'm actually hopeful that the game gets delayed so it doesn't impact this start for Scherzer. Let it get delayed and let him pitch from there in case it does rain. But yes, I did fire on the Mets minus 124 FanDuel. So we'll move on from there. And I do like Scherzer on the DFS side today. You look at his price. Obviously, to me, I don't care that Sanchez is 6,700 is unplayable for me. A guy that's likely to get mauled. One of these starts incoming, and I'm not looking to figure out when that actually happens. Looking like about 10% ownership out of Sanchez. And on the Scherzer end, so yeah, I do see 24% ownership on Scherzer, and it is tough to kind of pull that trigger on the road against a very live lineup for Philly. I'm not saying that I absolutely love Scherzer today, but at his price, when you talk about potential value, it's 8,900, right? So I think if you want to call it good chalk to eat, I do consider Scherzer good chalk to eat. You obviously always want to find your pivots against chalk, especially when you're at multi-entering tournaments. But I don't think this is a spot you really want to try to get cute. Maybe go at the field of Scherzer, 20-ish%. Don't go crazy. Pitching on this slate is a bit of a nightmare. So you might see scattered ownership anyway. But I do like Scherzer despite the ownership that's coming his way, just based on the slate and his price. Again, you just don't really have your bona fide studs that you really feel good about coming into this 4 o'clock main slate. Orioles, Mariners, Dean Kramer pitched pretty good last time out on Sunday. I think, 1 earned, 3 runs, few extra runs were given up, errors, had some decent strikeouts as well. Bryce Miller starting to come back to earth a bit. Still looks the part, or has looked the part, if you will. Has struggled on the road, though. It is worth noting. And yeah, he comes off 2 good home starts. But man, has this dude really struggled on the road. So yeah, I don't necessarily love the spot for him. I also don't love the spot for Kramer. I know that from a price point perspective, where exactly do we line up here? So 87 for Kramer. I know that Gary from the Sunday show last week, for those that watched, I know he was high on Kramer. I even stuck him in a few lineups, which I did well with because he ended up getting that 24 burger. I do have concerns over some consistency, though, with him. You do now have back-to-back good starts from him. You're also much similar to the Merrill Kelly situation. You are paying top season salary for Dean Kramer today if you play him. The good part with Kramer is he rarely sees ownership. I'm seeing 8%. I'll be honest, I expect that to be a little higher than that. But he just doesn't see ownership. Part of it's because he really doesn't strike out a lot of guys. But he has been. And on the other side, in terms of Miller, I'm just trying to look up what we got for ownership for him. It's probably light as well. Yeah, I mean, he's going to be unowned. 9,500 is a crazy price to pay in Baltimore. So, yeah, 2 more pitchers, easy fades on my end. I'll talk bats after I go through these slates. But as far as pitching goes, another 2 arms completely off. Move over to the next game. Yanks, Rangers. Rangers, I think, are up to minus 155 at some spots. Total's 9. Severino's been a nightmare in the month of June. He had a really good May. Just been, again, nothing short of a nightmare in June. The good news for Sevy is that he is better at home. He's got good home splits, much worse on the road. John Gray, I believe, before his last start was first or second in the league in WHIP. That kind of changed in a hurry for him in his last start. Might push, not that nobody was going to play him anyway, or anybody was going to play him anyway, but I do believe on that Sunday slate last week, I think he was like 17% owned or 16% owned, which is kind of crazy considering, again, we talk on when you play pitchers who balloon their price tag, right? On that Sunday slate, John Gray's price tag ballooned to 10-1, and he's not a guy that strikes a lot of people out. Sure, he has a few one-off starts. He had the 12 Ks against St. Louis, right, the 2 starts ago. I know he's got a few 8K spots as well, but he is not a guy you can rely on to consistently get strikeouts. And when you're going to pay that type of price for a pitcher, you just need to keep that in mind. Remember, projections matter. Sure, in various ways, pitchers will exceed expectations and underperform, but you still have to take projections into account. Now, this is probably a good quote unquote bounce back start for Mr. Gray. But again, you still need him to get you strikeouts today. Yankees lineup's not great, but it is warm. Wouldn't surprise if a few left the yard for the Yanks here. Texas bats are always super live. I will say, as I look through ownership here with Severino, it is interesting. It looks like he's going to be like 13% owned. I think he's a good pivot today at 7,200. I think people are afraid to select arms against this Texas lineup, and I don't blame them. But at 7,200, the guy's proven he can throw at home. I know he's been struggling this month, but and I can't even call this like a get right spot against this Texas lineup. But from a price perspective, in terms of the upside Severino has, 7,200 is just way too cheap for a guy that's going to be 13% owned. So pound for pound, I really like Severino on this slate. Definitely a top three pitcher for me. And by top three pitcher, I don't necessarily mean top three pitcher in terms of scoring output. I mean pound for pound per dollar based on projections as well. I look at Sevy as a top three play on this slate. Again, this is not a slate where you really feel great about any pitcher you're going to throw into your lineup. And Severino, you get him for cheap. You have 25, 28 point upside with Severino. Will you get that? I guess that would be quite a stretch, right? But a lot of his bad starts this year have come at home. He does have a 20. He did kick off the year with two good starts against Cincy and San Diego, right? Two good teams. You don't need a lot for him at this price. You really don't. You get 17, 18. You get, 6 innings, 3 earned, 6 Ks. You're really right where you need to be. So I know he's been tough sledding. I know he's a tough guy to click on, but maybe that means he's a tough guy for everybody to click on. So I really like the spot for Sevy here to pitch okay or relatively okay for the price he's at. So yeah, really really like that spot. Andrew, I'll go through this as we move forward. And Kim, yeah, obviously you always want to price shop anyway with how you're betting games, whether it's Bet Rangers or Bet Yang. You always want to price shop that, but I have seen it as high as 155. 137 would be as low as I've seen him. Would you try playing him on FanDuel? Byron, let me pull up the FanDuel pool. I don't know his price off the top of my head on FanDuel. So again, the price matters, right? To me, Severino's a good option because of his price. So let me see. This is probably going to make me authenticate with my cell phone, which is not near me. Please verify you're a human. Is this like a new thing with FanDuel? Are we joking? Seems fun. That site seems fun. LOL. All right. Like didn't even log me in. I could pull this off from Sabre. I'll just pull it off for Sabre, their pricing. Unless you just know it. But I guess it matters. It matters versus the slate, right? So even if I said to you, yeah, I would say you could play Sevy. It matters based on the slate. So let me just at least fully address that for you. Because it is relevant, right? I'm sure there's other people that are, maybe watching and building FanDuel lineups. So try to get this as accurate as possible. But do keep in mind, FanDuel's different, right? Because FanDuel, you need one pitcher. You don't need two. So you really want a guy that's going to give you decent upside. Now, it looks like on FanDuel, he's 7,200, which, oof, that is super cheap on FanDuel. The issue I have with FanDuel versus DraftKings is Severino's a great second piece for DraftKings to me. Like at his price, he's a great second piece. As your primary piece on FanDuel, it does get a little sticky because if you're going to take down tournaments, you really need like at least 40 out of your pitcher in most scenarios on that site. And wow, I mean, the way you get 40, like you probably either need to get the win or need to pitch really well. And, I like him for what I consider to be a decent floor. I do think it's tough sledding to ask Severino against Texas to pull off, a heavy ceiling type game from him, right? So my argument there would be, and I look at these other prices on FanDuel, not playing FanDuel today, so I obviously had a call it conviction at a slight level, but price per dollar on that site, to me, Jose Berrios makes the most sense. Price per dollar on that site, but again, you're gonna see the ownership from that, right? He's the same price as Scherzer. He's in a much better spot than Scherzer. He's home where you want to play Berrios, and I'll talk on that start as we get there, but. I'd rather play Berrios for 92 than Sevy for 72, if that makes sense. I don't have necessarily an issue with playing him on FanDuel. Again, you just need more of that upside from him versus DraftKings where he can be just a good second piece. And I wouldn't be paying 10-1 for Paxton or 10-5 for Merrill Kelly on that site. Like, that's just crazy. I'm not paying 9-9 for Peralta on the road. So, yeah, I think Berrios makes the most sense on that site. I hope that helps. All right, let me switch back over to DraftKings, and then let's move over to the next game. Would I take Boston today? Boston. Have I gotten to that game yet? I'll get to that game. We're getting closer and closer. Jays Athletics, Jose Berrios, Fujinami. What a disaster Fujinami's been. Kind of feel bad for him. This is a dude that definitely throws smoke, and it's almost hard to even fathom that this dude's whip is 2. I'm pretty sure this dude throws over 100 miles an hour. at minimum he touches 100. So yeah, it's crazy that this dude just continues to get shelled start after start. On the other end, Jose Barrios. What do we always say about Barrios, right? You want to play this dude at home. This price might seem inflated because Oakland, has maybe shown some flavors of life in certain capacities, but they've been losing a lot of games lately. Again, I know that they went through a bit of a winning streak, sort of, but they're back to their normal ways. I don't know. Barrios on DraftKings to me is a borderline lock. Um, at the price for the slate, he's 99. He's even 92 on FanDuel. He has the upside to get you there. He's playing a team that just really struggles to really pile up hits. And I know weeks back they had this little run of stringing hits and runs together, but that's kind of ended. Barrios at home, you could typically rely on to get you 6 good innings, and typically again get you 6 to 7 Ks. I know that he's got um, a bunch of mid starts in between. But again, all that's probably helping his ownership here for this spot. I look at Sabre. Sabre doesn't even. I'll be honest. Like this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to see Barrios when I see like 12% ownership, 15% ownership. That really doesn't make sense because to me, Barrios at 9.9 is a better play than Kelly at 10.1. But more people are going to play Kelly today. That doesn't really make sense. The same people are going to pay $400 more for James Paxton at Chicago, a lefty against a righty heavy lineup for Chicago. Yeah, not really feeling that either. So yeah, ultimately pound for pound, Barrios, favorite play on the slate, favorite pitcher on the slate, both DraftKings and FanDuel. If he doesn't get there, he doesn't get there. But man, like I just, to me, building lineups, I love the Sevy combo with Barrios. You have, it's affordable. You're able to get bats, as you mentioned, Andrew. Bats are expensive. You get that cost savings, and you have upside despite the cost savings. So I like these two pitchers combined together. As far as sticks, you can make yourself a little different. Remember, folks, typically on slates like this, a lot of optimizers and even people hand building don't always like to play the pitcher with the sticks. So you could make yourself a little different, go for that Blue Jays route, play Barrios with the sticks. I don't necessarily advise that. I wouldn't. Well, granted, obviously Fujinami is always targetable. But I do think that might see a little more ownership than it normally does. I'll talk on a stack I like a little more once we get through this slate in total. But I can't mind the Jays. I want to be clear; they're going to see ownership regardless. But I think all that might potentially be driving Barrios' numbers down because the Jays might be the most popular stack or one of the more popular stacks. But either way, we'll move on. Reds, Braves, right? Graham Ashcraft. Who's been really, honestly, pretty bad all year long. I know that he had some lucky starts, what I'll call them, his first month. But like his advanced numbers continue to look like shit, and that's been coming full circle for him. Jared Schuster, in my opinion, is another mutt of a pitcher. Granted, the experience isn't really there, right? But the guy is trying to eat innings in whatever way he can for this Braves team. That's just a launching pad, right? With their sticks, it's been pretty phenomenal. And I know we talked coming into the year, or there's been conversations coming into the year, just how good that Braves lineup is going to be, right? There's no easy outs. There's really nowhere to hide as a pitcher against this team. You got Michael Harris, who bats ninth, and I know he's been struggling in his own right, but this dude was a pretty bona fide prospect coming up. And yeah, there's just sticks all over the place, right? Led by, arguably the best hitter in baseball in Acuna. So yeah, ultimately, here's my issue. A lot of this game looks like there'll be runs. I don't ever bet a total at this park that's 12 over. That is, again, this park is still called the East Coast Coors. However, East Coast Coors is not where you have altitude like you do in Coors. So I get it. You have two bet arms, but I say this truthfully that this is probably the highest number ish that we will see all year at this park. It just doesn't, like, long term, it doesn't make sense that you would profit long term betting over 12 in Cincinnati. And I think that it might be 12 and a half now. No, I'm still seeing some 12, some juice in terms of the over 12. But man, you just don't, you're not going to make money betting over 12 at this park. This park's not built for 12 runs. This is the type of park where, when you want to target overs in a warm day, you want to target like 10 and a halves, even 11 at the max. 12 is to me is crazy for this park. I just can't bet it under because it's like 20 runs yesterday. Sticks are hot. The Reds have been winning game after game after game. The Braves are going to have opportunities to get to Ashcraft today. They basically hit everybody, and Ashcraft is very vulnerable. You figure the Reds will get to Schuster. But again, the reason why I can't bet this over is just based on, we'll call it a flavor of discipline with this park. But as far as stacks go, I think this is I know this is a hot take. I think this is a good game to just mini stack. That's it. Do not full stack this game. Everybody's going to be stacking this game. It's just, to me, again, you talk about leverage pivots and where you want to find pivots and how you want to get to them. This is just not these are bets everybody's going to want to play. I mean, you look at the ownership projections for who's seeing the biggest ownership on the slate. And I'm looking at Saber, and it looks like 10 of the top 12 guys that are going to be the highest owned are going to be in this game. Like, you're not moving up anywhere if you're playing, multi-entry tournaments, playing these dudes. Like, you're just not. So, yeah, I get it. This sport has been so chalky. It's like for a long period of time now, but it's not always going to be. And, you got to kind of bob when folks are weaving and weave when they're bobbing. And I look at, 10 of the top 12 highest owned guys projected on the slate are from this game. So, yeah, this is a spot where you mini stack. That's it. You don't full stack this game because you're going to be just like everybody else. If this game nukes, so be it. But again, if it nukes, you're not advancing your way through the field the way you think you are. But meanwhile, if this game ends like 5-3, where a few guys maybe donged or a few guys hit doubles, your mini stacks could get there, but full stacks I just think is kind of crazy, all things considered. And then you look at and then you add in the fact of like the pricing of some of these bats. Like, I get it, the Reds are cheap, so sure, but I mean, even like 4,300 from Michael Harris batting ninth, like 19% owned. Like, are we joking? Ellie De La Cruz, who truthfully has proven to be quite a stud, 5,700. I mean, we're already in that, like, Aaron Judge price point area. I don't know. So yeah, to me, this becomes a game where you mini stack max, maybe two bats. More than that, you're just going to be like everybody else. So hope that makes sense. All right, move on to the next game. White Sox, Red Sox. I know somebody asked before what I thought about the Red Sox. So I'll say this: Paxton's a fade for me on this slate. He gets there. But again, I hate to sound like a broken record. You have a guy in James Paxton who has looked good this year. I will say his velo's up again. But look, you're paying 1,000 more than he's been priced all season long. And it's not like he has a great matchup. Like, it's not like he's home against the Oakland or home against the Royals. Suits on the road against the White Sox, who have a ton of right-handed bats. Like, yeah, I get it. The White Sox have been kind of dog shit in their own way, but they certainly have righties that are capable of causing havoc, right? I mean, Tim Anderson, Robert Jr., Jimenez, even Grandal. You got Clint Frazier, who, yeah, like, he sucks in his own right, but he's got pop from the right side. On the other end, though, it's tough to love Lance Lynn. He's been also, a flavor of dog shit. But I don't know. The spots, I'll tell you this much. Lance Lynn at 7,800, I'd play before I played 10-3 James Paxton. As he used to be called, Big Maple from the Mariner days. And I get it. He's looked better. But, man, that's just crazy, that type of price point. It feels like just wasted money. Because I don't think he has consistent upside there. Like, I know he's pitched a few good starts in a row, but just a lot to ask out of a guy in Paxton at 10-3 to get there for you. And then when you talk about practically 16, 17% ownership, yeah, no thank you. I think pitching, to me, for this 4 p.m. slate is very concentrated. I've already mentioned two arms that I like. I don't mind Lance Lynn. The fact that he's going to be like pretty chalky, I kind of don't like. But I'll tell you this: I'd play Lance Lynn definitely over Paxton at these price points. That's for sure. As far as whether to be concerned about, the only game that's really a concern is Philly. But even if it starts to rain, should be quick because after it looks like after 4:30 p.m. you're good from there, Brian. Now look, I'm not a weatherman. I just I just look at what I have as far as the reports. That's the only game where you're kind of vulnerable. Is Chirinos in play? So we'll definitely get there. Um, Rays Royals, Chirinos versus Jordan Lyles. Um, I, I'm not a big Chirinos guy. He's looked okay, I guess. Um, my concern is he's really just a glorified pen arm, which of course limits the upside. He does not really strike people out either, which again limits upside. Let me just pull his price briefly to see if he's even feasible. So 6'6", I mean at 6'6", I guess he's feasible. Um, I mean, yeah, you could get 5 innings, 4 Ks, 2 earned out of him, and I guess that would be okay. But like, if you're gonna pay 6.6 for him, I'd rather just pay 7.2 for Severino with more K upside. So let me just see where he's projected ownership wise. I can't imagine he's gonna be owned. I mean, he's gonna be 13% owned, which is higher than I would think. Eh, I like a guy like him. Guys like him, I never play. And I get it. He was higher priced earlier in the year, and now he's kind of in this mid price range where his price has been kind of climbing. Keep in mind at 6'6", you need basically 20 from him. He hasn't scored 20 all year. Yeah, a matchup's great though, so I can't mind him. We'll call him my fourth or fifth, favorite starter on this slate for the price. But I really don't love it. You want to win tournaments, you need guys with upside. He really doesn't have it. So yeah, I don't like the best case scenario you're going to get out of him is what 21, 22, which from your pitcher isn't terrible when he's 66. But you really want guys that at least have ceilings that can reach mid 20s. It doesn't appear to be him. I'm sure he'll do it once this year, but um, you know, thanks for your info. I'll take your weather update over those clowns who get paid to be wrong. Yeah, I mean, look, it's the best profession in that sense, right, Bry? Like you don't need to be right. You just kind of read the Doppler radar and you go from there. What bet you like today? Any unders you see? So I already talked on I like Scherzer today. I know he's juiced up a bit, but I do think he's not juiced up enough. So there is another game I'll get to that's actually later tonight. As far as unders go, weather's getting warmer. Like I'm not saying that you have to bet overs. Just keep in mind weather's getting warmer. I'm not sure the books have totally over adjusted to this, and we already have the natural advantages for runs with the new pitch clock and the stolen bases and no more shifts. So just keep that in mind. You see a lot of these lower totals. It's not like I'm jumping at the bit to get on these. All right, so Guardians Brewers. We're still on this 4 o'clock slate. Or is this Guardians Brewers game on DraftKings? Okay, so Freddie Peralta at 9.3. I do think makes sense. Now, my issue with Peralta is how bad he is on the road. As my guy Gary calls him, fastball Freddie, throws a ton of fastballs, finds himself in plenty of jams, and he's just always a tough watch on the road. Cleveland's a small favorite here behind BB. I'm not a big BB guy either. I think this guy plays with too much fire way too often, or plays with fire way too often. That would lean me in the direction of an over. But when you look at the sticks from both these teams, like it's not like you love what you're seeing. And then obviously the Brewers got the good pen. Like I don't know. Like I bet the Brewers where they exit a game with the best pen in baseball and I lose. I bet the Guardians where they let off with a lead in baseball and they have one of the top pens in baseball and they lose. So I don't know. I haven't gotten these pens right. My strongest lean by far is this game over 8.5. I missed the boat at 8, but I just runs in this game make sense because Peralta's terrible on the road. BB just finds himself in constant jams. And all you need is a few balls to leave the yard when one of these pitchers is in jams. And you'll likely feel good about it. And then when you talk about projected ownership for this game, it's got to be like next to nothing. Let me just pull this up real quick. So look here. Yeah, I mean Peralta's going to see 10% ownership. I'll be honest, like I said, 9,300, 10% ownership. I do like that. I think that's a spot you can be overweight on. I know I'm talking about, there being runs, but this is all just price point perspective. There could be runs and Peralta could still get there for you because he has good K upside. In terms of bats for this game, we talk on ownership. The highest owned bat's going to be 5%. And this is a good leverage spot. Again, I don't love these arms. You have guys from both ends that can in fact go yard. Um, so yeah, and the price points aren't crazy either, right? Like you get 4,600 Yelich, 4,400 Contreras. I'm not in love with the 5,600 tag on Ramirez, but you flip the script to the other end. Rowdy Tellez batting third is 3,700. Like this Milwaukee stack, it's just uber cheap. 1, 2, 3, 4. And even like Steven Kwan, who I get it doesn't have much upside unless he's getting you stolen bases, but he's 4,200 leading off. Naylor's batting fourth, 4,000. I think this is a good spot to be a little different. You got the free punt and David Fry. Um, yeah, I mean Rosario batting second. So yeah, ultimately, I think you can mini stack this game to save some money. And again, it's just a spot where runs make sense. So um, hope you find that informative. Is the Rangers the safest bet today? I don't think so. I think that they were a good bet last night when they were like minus 118. Now they're up to like, again, I've seen them as high as minus 155. It's a lot of movement for a game. Um, I think they're safer than other bets today. But again, I don't think as I mentioned, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if Sevy goes out there and throws a pretty good start today. So, um, take that for what it's worth. But I don't. I think they are a bit overpriced there. Um, all things considered. All right, so we'll move on to what game we on next? Marlins Pirates. So Osvaldo Bido. Um, Small sample thus far, hasn't been great. I know the ERA might attract some. What doesn't attract me is the whip. A guy that's in and out of trouble quite often. And on the other end, Brian Hoeing has actually been good. Now, the concerning part here is, do we really want to pay minus 170 behind Hoeing, who does find himself in jams as well? It's not like he's a clean ERA at 2.7. But man, the Pirates have really been spiraling, right? It's like they had all this stuff going their way early, and we kind of knew, right? I know the NL Central's kind of dog shit, but we kind of knew this team plateaued or was about to plateau just based on their talent. I know they get the win yesterday, but I mean, they've just been really skidding, right? 10 straight losses before that. So maybe they turn things around with this one. But I don't know. I wish this line was like a little more fair, I guess. Like I wish it was like minus 140 because then I'd love to lay that half run first five at potential light dog money. But Pirates are playing like dog shit. They squeeze a win yesterday, but they're still playing like dog shit. Marlins have been respectable, and the Marlins have proven they can score runs against obsolete pitching. Again, Beto is a guy that in his limited starts has been getting shelled. So I don't mind a little Marlins love as far as sticks go. I really don't. And you can always get these guys for cheap. Let me see what we're dealing with here price wise. So first of all, from an ownership perspective, this lineup is unowned. Arias, I get it. It's kind of tough to love to play at 4,900 because he has absolutely no pop. So you kind of need one of those 3-hit days out of him to meet that price tag. And because he leads off, he doesn't often have a lot of RBI opportunities. But, Soler at 5.4, nobody's going to play this dude at that price. Nobody. 3%, 4% owned. You do, whether it's a 1, 2, 3 stack there or a 2, 3, 4 stack where you get Jesus Sanchez at 3,100. I really like that because, again, I don't trust this Pittsburgh pitcher at all. And I like what you're getting, we'll call it out of, the potential leverage here, right? And that's what we need, right? You need leverage plays. You need to try to find your way to be different from the chalk. The Marlins bats today make a lot of sense. And I'll be honest, like I'm not against Hoeing at all. Like I know this dude. I know this dude. That they uplifted his pitch count to 54. I know that they're trying to get him through more and more pitches or pitch counts and whatnot. But again, this is a guy nobody's going to play. He has K upside for on a per inning basis. If he can squeeze 4 innings, 6 Ks out of this spot, I do have an issue with his upside here, right? Because of that limitation of innings. But I'll be honest, like I like him more at 6.9 than I do Chirinos at 6.6 because at least Hoeing's got K upside. So yeah, again, I'm not lining up to play Hoeing today, but I definitely don't mind. Um, I don't mind the spot, especially since again he's going to be a guy that nobody clicks on. So just keep that in mind. You're looking at sub 5-6% ownership. Do I think the Mets stack are in play? I do because, as I mentioned, um, Christopher, what's the dude's last name? Christopher Sanchez is like doomsday waiting to happen. Dude got mauled in the farm system and had a few good starts to start the year, but problem is with the Mets, they're just not hitting, right? So maybe that'll deter people from playing them. Maybe. I don't know. But actually, let me look at what the Mets ownership looks like today overall. Mets ownership today. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at basically less than 10% for these dudes. I do love this to pivot, if I'm being honest. I think that they have a really good opportunity to get runs on the board today. So, use that to your advantage as much as you'd like. And I don't mind the pairing with Scherzer either. I'm just not as much of a Scherzer guy in general, but I do think that for the cheap price of the Mets, when you include how good of a spot their sticks are in today, along with Scherzer, yeah. So as far as a stack, I do really like the Mets, and I do think they're more than just in play. What do you think of Bryce Miller over 3.5 Ks minus 170? So keep in mind, minus 170, you basically need to cash. I don't know the odds off the exact odds off the top of my head, but you basically to profit on a minus 170 bet, you basically need to cash that like 63% of the time. Um, good luck. Good luck. So if you think over 6 times out of 10, we'll call it, to round it out, we'll call it 64, 65 times out of 100 that he Ks 4 guys today, then it's worth the bet. If you don't, then it's not worth the bet, because I do think that kind of gets lost in translation in terms of betting odds and how people kind of climb the ladder. You obviously missed the boat because they don't open lines at 3.5 minus 170, so it's been steamed up for you. So I guess the short answer is I don't love it. The longer answer is it's complicated, because of it really, that type of bet really needing to cash sub 60% of the time. What's up, Cody? And so why don't they just adjust the numbers of Ks? They want the easy action. Well, Patrick, I promise you, if you're seeing 3.5 minus 170 at one book, you're going to find 4.5 at dog money at another. You just kind of got to search for it. You'll definitely find it. It also depends on the book you're using, right, Pat? Because if you're using a legal market book, typically you'll have K props that they're going to post typically like 4 to 5 hours before the game. But on like a weekday, these could be posted as early as 9, 10 a.m. for the day. So really depends. It's a bit of a fluid market in that sense. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, when you use one book, you're really limited to the odds of that one book, and you're just not doing yourself justice. I'm not telling you need 10 books, but at least get you 4 to 5 books that you're comfortable with to at least leverage better bets. I'm more of a DraftKings FanDuel guy at this day and age, just because I've been limited at way too many of these little small books. But DraftKings FanDuel kind of let me get down money, and despite kind of the head scratchiness on my end of going back, call it 3 or 4 months now with bets, at least I know they'll let me get down money. These other books, Caesars and Sugar House and BetMGM, it's not fluid. And I know that DK does limit people as well. I'm well aware of that. But typically the folks they limit are typically not playing relatively high stakes DFS. So you look at most of your high stakes DFS players. As far as just straight bets, they're not limited much. I mean, pitching props, yeah, you're going to get folks that are going to get limited in them. Batter props, you're going to get limited in. But as far as like actual game spreads, FanDuel, DraftKings, for guys that play a lot of DFS, that they really, really tighten tighten up around who they limit in that regard. All right, so move on next game. That's the end of the slate, right? Yeah. So just to round out the slate, and then I'll go through these last 4 games, and then we'll get out of here. I think pitching wise, I really think you have limited, very, very limited options as far as who you should have in your pools. Now, granted, look, it'll be my cross to bear. I'll die on the sword in certain regards. I can't play Merrill Kelly, so I can't play anybody from the first game. Already mentioned that. I can have some Scherzer. Scherzer's fine. I'm not going to be overweight on Scherzer. He's going to be a popular play on this slate. I can't play either pitcher from the Oriole game. I think both are susceptible for runs. I can't play John Gray at 9-9, a guy that doesn't strike anybody out. Severino's a guy I like today. Definitely top 3 in my pool. Berrios is my favorite play in the slate, pound for pound. Obviously, no Fujinami. Neither pitcher in Cincy Braves, but nobody's going to play them anyway. I will have some Lance Lynn. James Paxton's unplayable. I guess how it breaks out in theory, I could have a lineup with Chirinos because of his price. Absolutely not playing Jordan Lyles. Freddie Peralta is a guy based on how the optimizers or how the optos run that in theory I could have. I'm not playing BB. I don't trust him at all. I will have some hoeing, not a lot. Absolutely no Beto. And as far as stacks go, I already talked about a low-key leverage stack that I like. Brewers Guardians, they're cheap. I think that it makes sense for runs in that game. It's warm in Cleveland. I think the Mets are a really good pivot stack off your popular stacks today, just based on the spot. Christopher Sanchez is just due to get blasted, whether it's today, the next start, whatever. And obviously, you hate to say it's due and rely on that. I'm not telling you it's definitely going to happen, but he's going to get himself into some jams. And I know the Mets haven't been hitting, but that's part of the reason why they're going to go unowned. So you're getting less than 10% ownership of a team. I really like that spot for them. Because I don't like the pitching in the Orioles Mariners, of course, I have to like the bats. So I'm okay with mini stacks there. I will be completely fading the Rangers today. If they beat me against Sevy, they beat me. But again, you got to get away from, you got to find your spots where you're going to get away from popular stacks. Blue Jays stack, I will have today. I will have no Athletics because I do like Berrios as my favorite arm. Fujinami obviously is a no. I will have at maximum mini stacks of Reds Braves. I will not have more than 3 bats from either team in the same lineup. That is more to do with just pivoting off of leverage. You look at the slate, it's just maxed out in this game. So, where do you try to be different? And I've already given you some spots. This is not going to be, a spot I like. I do think you can target the White Sox bats a bit. I wish their pricing was just a tad cheaper, but I don't think it's terribly wrong to play the White Sox today. I don't think at all. And I look at the ownership of these dudes, less than 5%. They get a lefty who's proven to be susceptible over the last season or two. I get it. Paxton's looked good recently, and his velo's back, but I don't think it's crazy to play White Sox sticks, and I also obviously don't think it's crazy to play Red Sox sticks either. So this is a game that I think you can also play some sticks. On the Rays end, yeah, I think you can play Rays bats for sure. The problem with the Rays are they're always expensive, but I think you can slot them in. Let me just see how bad we're looking price-wise here. You obviously got a decently implied total. Looks like they're all less than 10% owned. So yeah, it's not an unpopular stack, but it's not a popular one either. But again, I don't necessarily love the prices of these dudes. They're all very high priced. But because they're high priced is why people won't play them, or not as much. Already mentioned Guardians Brewers. Love that game to stack just based on price points. You save some cash. Marlins Pirates. Won't be playing many Pirates, but Marlins is definitely a stack I can get behind. Beto's a guy that just makes sense to start getting blown up against. So yeah, definitely content to go there. So that kind of rounds out the slate. Obviously, if you have any questions or any more questions on the slate, I'm happy to answer them. Brian, on your end, I think Scherzer's a fade. I can't mind that. I can't mind that perspective. Again, he's not one of my favorite options in the slate, but he will be quite popular. And I think that he's in an okay spot if you're on the assumption that he builds confidence off his last start, right? He threw really well against Houston. It seemed like he kind of found his mojo. Can he parlay that into another good start? I don't know, but I do like the Mets bats regardless. So I'm good there. Yeah, I mean, there's just not a lot, Andrew. There's just not a lot of threats for hoeing. The problem is his lack of pitch count, right? You're going to get a guy that's going to got a pitch count of 50, 55 on the maximum end. You just really need him to be efficient. But again, you don't need a lot out of him. If he pitches a clean 4 innings, happens to just luck box into 6 Ks or something over 4 innings with no earned. Yeah, I mean that dude would smash his tag at that point. Yeah, so Patrick, Brave Cincy obviously is going to be a super popular stack. So yeah, you're just not in a multi-entry tournament. You're just not going to move up the leaderboard playing these dudes. Like you're just not. Like what you want to put when you multi-enter tournaments. What you want to do is you want to put yourself in a situation where you're finding leverage opportunities, and when those leverage opportunities get there for you, and it's not going to be all the time, of course, it's arguably not even going to be 30 or 40% of the time. But when those leverage spots get there for you, even as low as 20% of the time, you are legitimately live for a takedown. If you play these types of Braves bats every day with everybody else, you literally could hit the nuts and still lose and still not reach your pinnacle, right? So that's just kind of my take. I get it. People are going to play these bats. They make sense. They've been scoring a ton of runs. The ownership's just crazy on these dudes. So mini stack at the most, in my opinion. I'm not telling you to avoid the game. I'm not telling you I'm fading the game. I mean, that's for sure. But I do think, keep yourself to mini stacks. I'm obviously keeping maximum 2 bats per team per lineup. Maybe you want to do it 3. Maybe you just say, maybe it doesn't have to be, maybe you just say maximum 4 bats from the game, maybe. However you want to do it. I just think long-term speaking, and look, today there could be 100 runs in that game. I'm not sitting here telling you there's no way there's going to be runs scored. There could be 85 runs scored today in that game, right? Just saying long-term, you look at the ownership numbers, you just don't win in this sport. Long-term, just playing chalk, okay? It's not the sport to do that in. College football, yes, you will make money playing chalk and finding slight pivots, but weekly, you eat chalk in college football, okay? You don't daily. We eat chalk in this sport. Not to say you can't one off here and there, but the times you one off, boy, must you have gotten lucky, because you had to compete against a large percentage of people who had the exact same lineups. Hope all that makes sense. All right. You think John Gray goes deep today? I think the spot makes sense for a good bounce back for John Gray. I just hate the price tag. He doesn't strike anybody out. So, you just need a luck box like him to get a lot of Ks, right? If he's going to get there at this price tag. So that's really my issue. All right, let's move on to the last 3 games, then we'll get out of here. Dodgers, Astros. Dodgers kind of finding themselves in some kind of way. Bobby Miller's been good, right, for this group since he's come up. I think he's been even worse at home somehow, which maybe that's just an anomaly. I don't know. You'd figure a young kid like him would be better, served at home, but I guess those numbers are skewed by his implosion last start. In relation to here, Dodgers 190. It makes sense and it doesn't. Blanco to me sucks. Like, this is a dude that's just trying to eat innings for this team while they're dealing with injuries. This dude is always in trouble every inning. He's got strikeout upside, but the dude just consistently is in jams. I mean, when your ERA is over 1.5, you're in jams. His ERA is 1.7. I mean, his ERA is whip I'm talking about. When you have somebody whose whip is over 1.5, they're in jams. When it's over 1.7 or when it's 1.7, it's just, grab your ass cheeks when this guy's on the hill and you have money invested in him. Like, even like last Sunday, where he was kind of a decent DFS option, he was like 5,500 in a good spot start, and he still really didn't get there for you. So it's a good spot for the Dodgers sticks. Miller's shown some regression. Maybe he bounces back. Maybe he doesn't. This line feels a little padded in favor of the Dodgers, but again, I don't trust Blanco at all. As far as a total of 9, I guess it makes sense for an over, but these teams have 2 good pens as well. I know the Dodgers started the year with terrible at the pen, but their actual pen arms that close games out are really good. So yeah, I don't know. Total 9, it's a semi-decent number for this park, so I don't love that. So yeah, it becomes an overall a decent pass for me. So we can move on. Pablo Lopez is only minus 160 on the road against the Detroit Tigers. That should say enough to how he's been pitching lately, because Reese Olson, you see, now interestingly enough with Reese Olson, at least with him, you get a guy that just can't really pitch from the stretch, I guess, because here's a guy who has 20 innings. His whip is not even 1.1, yet his ERA is monstrous. The dude gets a handful of ground balls, but he's definitely more considered a fly ball pitcher. Has seen some tough lineups, right? If you look at who he's played, right? He really only got shelled against the Braves. So I don't mind him as a pitcher. I think he's better than he gets credit for. And that might be why the line is also padded a little lower in favor of Pablo. But Pablo, who started the year phenomenal, just went really south. I believe it started in June. I don't know if it's been all of June, but I do believe the downfall of Pablo started in June. The good thing with Pablo, you get the K upside, right? So you do kind of like that. Somehow he's been getting shelled at home, not on the road. But this is a guy that 2 straight starts with 3 earned or more. Arguably should have had even more earned in that start against Milwaukee. The good part with him is he tends to limit the home run ball, which keeps his ERA lower than what it could be. But yeah, I don't know. Call it a lean in favor of the Tigers because I like Olsen. Um, but wouldn't surprise if Pablo against a bad lineup kind of found himself. So I wouldn't be shocked on that either. Can't bet this under or over specifically because I think there's too many variables here. I think Olsen could pitch well in theory. I think Pablo Lopez could pitch well in theory, but it wouldn't surprise me if Pablo, who hasn't been pitching confidently, gives up a few runs to the Tigers. And then on the other end, Olsen, who despite his low whip continues to find ways to give up runs. Wouldn't surprise me if that happened either. So the game overall becomes just an easy pass. Move over to the Padres, a team that was maybe starting to find themselves for a bit and then stopped. I think now they've won a few games. Matt Waldron making his absolute debut. It's like we say often. You can pull up any numbers on these dudes. You can have a conversation with their fucking father about how they think they're going to pitch. You should have two directions. I'm sorry, you should have one direction every time a new prospect or a new starter makes their major league debut. Okay, you should either be on the side of I always like to target these guys that I like, these guys that I convince myself based on the data that they could pitch well, that they have great upside and target them, or you need to consistently be on the other side of the arena where you say, no, I never play guys making their debut. There's too much emotion involved. There's too much variance involved. There's too much pressure involved. I think if you try to bob and weave like where you decide to fade and back pitchers making their major league debut, I just think there's more than just analytics that goes into this. You try to put yourselves in these guys' shoes, right? They work their whole life to get to this stage, right? You're only fooling yourself if you don't believe there's any type of nerves that come with that when they get there. Now, granted, certain people deal with pressure differently, right? The old adage, pressure makes diamonds, but the harsh reality is I think you're crazy for investing money for or against these types of arms when they're starting because you're just removing analytics from the equation and you're really betting off of an emotion. And I do think it makes it tough, right, to really love it. Now, Josiah Gray on the other end, he's been tough to watch. He's also been not so tough to watch. He's a decent arm. I said this last year about him that if you watch him pitch, he's got good stuff. And his ERA was always inflated. The Padres have now gone back to back with, I think, 10 runs or more in back to back games. Of course, they did that. I didn't bet them. Here, though, I don't know. I don't want to target a new guy. And Josiah Gray is a bit Jekyll and Hyde. He's on the road. He's seeing a very potent lineup that's now scored 10 runs in 2 straight games. So easy pass for me overall. We'll head over to the last game. Griffin, Canning, Chase, Anderson, Rockies, Angels. I absolutely love this total over the number. The Angels bullpen, it leaves a ton to be desired. The Rockies bullpen is awful, and they went through their top pen arms yesterday. I know that yesterday the game did not go over, but I'd argue the total was exactly the same, and the pitching matchup was better yesterday. You had Sandoval on the one end. I can't remember who specifically started for I want to say it was Kyle Freeland. So you had Freeland and Patrick Sandoval, and the total is now the same with 2 worse pitchers in this game. So easy target for me over. We already have a degraded version of the pen from the Rockies. Both these pitchers do not eat innings. It will be warm in Colorado. This to me is a slam dunk. And I know I talked about earlier so yes, just to be clear, this is my second best bet of the day. I know I spoke earlier. I know I spoke earlier on the Reds, the East Coast cores, but there's a big difference, right? Like you don't have the altitude in Cincinnati that you do in Colorado, right? And the weather's practically the same. It's just, to me, this is just such a smash spot. And for folks that think 12.5 is a big number, I can't disagree. But if you guys remember, like I want to say it was maybe 6 years ago in really warm weather where they felt the balls might have been juiced. This park was hanging numbers at 17.5 in the month of August. This park has the altitude to inflate totals, and this is not news to anybody, but yes, 12.5 minus 104. I bet this over. I know I missed the boat on 12, but I didn't miss it by much because it's still pretty light vig. I actually might have got this minus 102 actually. What did I get this at? I did get this minus 102 at FanDuel. I really like it. I don't know how the money's gonna go from here. Some people are just naturally afraid to bet totals as high over, especially when one of the teams in the game is the Rockies. But we do know the Rockies can perform at home. If we get a decent lineup from the Angels, I love them to be able to get to Chase Anderson, who um, is just not a guy that can be trusted. And I know somehow his ERA is 2 at home, but that doesn't even make sense. I don't care if the home crowd on his side. It doesn't matter. He's somebody that gets really lit up from the left side. He's not exactly excellent versus the right side. So yeah, I expect them to get to him a bit. And on the Griffin Canning end, yeah, look, I used to talk pretty highly on Canning. I liked him as an upcoming prospect a few years back. I think he's got good K stuff, but man, this dude plays with a lot of fire. And you walk into a Rockies lineup at home where they typically perform better. He tends to get eaten up by right-handed bats. I'm pretty sure a reverse splits issue has been Griffin Canning's issue since he's come up. Needless to say, I love the spot for runs. I think you have 2 susceptible starting arms. You have 2 above-average lineups in the park, and you also have 2 degraded bullpens. So yeah, overall, love the spot. How much would you say lineup position calculates into the median projection? I would say at maximum a few decimal points, Patrick. I think it matters, right? But I don't think it matters as much as folks think. Like, for instance, if for whatever reason they moved Ronald Acuna to be batting ninth, I don't think people would stop playing him. Granted, he's not going to be moved to ninth, but I think it matters. But also keep in mind that everybody likes to play the guys top of the lineups. I get it, makes sense, right? You give yourself the best opportunity to get as many at bats, but keep in mind just how the sport works. The maximum number of at bats, of extra at bats that can be had from the top of the lineup is really 1, unless you're playing a platoon guy that could get pinch hit for. But obviously you should leverage that into your projections as well. So I think a few decimal points, but it does depend on the player too, though, to be very clear. So it will complicate in that sense, but a few decimal points. Angels Rocks over 12. But so Kim, is that minus 110, Bavada? I mean, either way, I'll need 13 to win it anyway. But minus 102, I liked the price there. So on the 2 games I like the Mets at minus 124, and I like the Rockies Angels over 12.5 at minus 102. Those are the 2 games I bet myself. I gave you out some leans as well. We talked through the whole slate. Holy shit, it's been over an hour. Maybe I talked too much. I don't know. Maybe I went down some rabbit holes I shouldn't have. But I hope you guys found this informative. Obviously, it was nice to grab 60, 70 you watching for most of it. Thank you for the interactions in the chat as well. I hope you guys at least like the video as well, right? It's not hard. We putting time and effort in on a Saturday. Yeah, so minus 120. So Kim, just to be clear before I finalize out this video, at that point, we're really grading a half run to be worth 18 cents. I don't think it's worth 18 cents for this situation. I think in theory, we could argue whether a half run's worth 18 cents in some regards or not. If the game, what you have to ask yourself with that, Kim, if the game falls 12, you're only going to push, and it's going to cost you 18 cents to do so. So you're really paying 18 cents to get your money back if it lands 12. So my answer, not worth it. That would basically imply that 1 out of every 5 times it'd have to be worth this 18 cents for you. I'm really not on board there either, Kim. So yeah, I'd prefer the 12.5 minus 102 over 12 minus 120 long term. Of course, this could land 12 tonight. Stick it up my ass. You get your money back. I lose my money. But it's not like there's a difference where you're actually winning money. I'd much prefer it opposite, where it's at that half run variance, right? Where you're paying extra money for that half run in your favor, where it's now a sticking point where now instead of pushing, it's a win. I always hate, saving money on a bet just to push, because ultimately that's really all that's happening. If the game lands 12, because if the game lands 11, both bets lose. If the game lands 12, you push, I lose. So the question you have to ask yourself, is the 18 cents worth that? All right. But yes, everybody, thank you for watching. Always appreciate you guys. I'll be back tomorrow talking baseball. And yes, baseball with Gary, Joey, even Holden, I believe, is back as well. So it should be a full stack tomorrow. NASCAR's back as well. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I even say that half-heartedly, right? It's how in the fuck could I be looking forward to NASCAR? I've lost so much money in that sport this year. But we carry on, right? I mean, I don't have this unlimited bankroll, but I'm hoping to kind of stick something in that sport sooner rather than later. But yes, as always, folks, gamble responsibly, stay safe, and yes, run pure. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.